we've got a little overview here of the 6 shortlisted early childhood books. The first one on my list is Don't Worry Felix, which is written by Johan Devesi and written by Johan Devesi and Catherine Alice. It's illustrated by Zoe Bennett. The book is about Felix, who's starting his first day at a new school. And he's feeling a bit weighed down, a bit worried. And this is represented by a big red balloon that continues to grow and grow and grow. He describes it as making his heart thump and his stomach twist. That is until his dad teaches him a special trick, and it helps him to calm his fears and feel a bit more ready to tackle the day. I've recommended this particular book for year 1 and 2, but you could use it also for early childhood and foundation. Some of the teaching activities that we have designed is firstly looking at sentence types and punctuation. So throughout the book, Don't Worry Felix, there's a number of exclamatory sentences that are used, which of course involves different punctuation. So a perfect opportunity for year 1 and 2 to learn about how to structure different sentence types using the exclamation mark, having a look at how that adds emotion and adds emphasis to a sentence, and also having a go at creating their own. As Felix is describing his worries and talking about the balloon getting biggest, this could be a great opportunity to look at comparative words. And I thought you could look around your classroom, maybe compare different objects, which would also tie into mathematics, and have a go at describing things as big or bigger, large or largest. So looking at comparative words. Repetition is used throughout the book, and it shows how Felix is feeling and how his emotions change throughout the course of the story. So that would be when you're looking at repetition in a narrative, it's a great way to explore how emotions are conveyed and also how it makes a narrative more cohesive. Word families and starting to look at morphology and how we can build words, links back into the big and the biggest, but also it talks about in the book wiggle to wiggling. So you would look at how you would drop the E and change it to ing, and how we can build word families, and how words have different meanings depending on how they end. I suggest that students can pick a verb either from the text or their own verb and change it into the different forms and see how the sentence changes based on the suffix that is used in the word. The book has many cross-curriculum opportunities. As I said, there's also mathematics from before, but also looking at history. So in particular, looking at the family structure of Felix's family and comparing it to the student's own family and the different families that are in your classroom. So students can draw or write about their family, and look at how different families are structured, but also roles within the family. In the book, we see Felix's father that is doing a lot of that home-based work, taking them to school, and all those sorts of things. So children can start to think about how their family and the roles in their family compare to Felix's. You can also look at health and physical education. So when Felix is taught the special trick by his dad, which is a breathing technique, students can have a think about their own self-regulation strategies, what they might use to calm their nerves, and regulate their own nervous system and make connections between themselves and Felix. The next book that I am going to talk to you about is Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About the Tooth Fairy and Some Things You Didn't. So this is written and illustrated by Bryony Stewart, and I have recommended it again for year 1 and 2. So it is a fully illustrated guide that explores the magical world of tooth fairies, and it answers children's questions and their curiosities about the tooth fairy, like what they like to eat, where they live, how they collect the teeth. So I found it to be a really fun resource, where you can explore different traditions and experiences that all children have as part of growing up. So when you are looking at this book, it's a great opportunity to look at the text purpose and the structure. So it's sort of a hybrid text in that it has the informative structure, but obviously has those magical and imaginative ideas. So children can look at the headings, diagrams, and looking at the labelled illustrations, and starting to explore how you can combine different genres and text to engage the reader. The visual elements of this text really stood out to me. So in particular, I really loved the tooth fairy, which was on page 3, and also the tooth fairy house. So I thought that students can start to create their own tooth fairy, maybe design their own tooth fairy house, and look at creating their own text by labelling and adding all those things that they've learnt about from an informative text. Persuasive writing was another great idea for year 1 and 2. So in the book, they talk about what the tooth fairy is going to leave and how the tooth fairy leaves different items or different amounts of money or different things for different children. So I thought that they could write a persuasive text about what they would personally give to a child if they were the tooth fairy, and try to justify why that's a good choice. But there's a lot of persuasive types of texts that you could come up with for year 1 and 2. The cross-curriculum opportunities with this book, I would be looking at the key learning area of health and physical education. So talking about dental hygiene, how we can care for our teeth, looking at healthy eating. And I thought you could create rules for looking after your teeth, and design a poster or a little presentation about the best way to take care of your teeth. That could also link to the persuasive writing. You could also link to mathematics. So in the book where they start to talk about how much money was going to be left, children would decide what they would buy with a certain amount of money, practice counting by 2s, 5s and 10s and making different amounts of money. But they could also maybe say how much they would leave if they were the tooth fairy, and similarly show different ways that you could make that amount. I also thought that this book had great links to drama, and there's a part where the tooth fairy goes through a little obstacle course, it looks like, and how they sneak into a child's room. Sounds a bit scary, but I promise it's all good things. So the students, I thought, could act out movement, what they would do if they were the tooth fairy sneaking through the room. So yeah, I thought that was a really fun text. The next book in this category is How to Move a Zoo, The Incredible True Story. It's by Kate Simpson and Owen Swan. And again, I've designed these activities for year 1 and 2. So the text is set in 1916. It is about Jessie, who is an elephant, and the journey that Jessie has gone on walking from Moore Park Zoo through the streets of Sydney to her new home at Taronga Zoo. So the illustrations really stood out to me in this text. They were just incredible, and it really shows the history at that time, and it's great for the children to see what it would have been like, the transport, the settings. The colours are really lovely, and it also shows the bond that Jessie has with her keeper. So when when I was thinking about this text, I'd be looking at the structure of the text, and how you combine a narrative story but based on real events. So this is the perfect book for doing that. So students can look at the narrative non-fiction features, but how the authors have used storytelling to make it more engaging, and to really tell that story from a true perspective. There was some great resources that we will link later on when lovely Eileen shows you at the end, that you sort of give you a bit more background information. I would definitely be showing students the real pictures. I think that's great for connecting the text with real life. Visual literacy can be explored through all of our texts today, but as I said, the illustrations in this book really stood out to me, particularly the transport. I think it would be great for showing students a comparison between 1916 and now, and looking at the cars, some of the buildings, and starting to understand some of the historical context from 1916. That links seamlessly to history and looking at then and now, transport, communication, the technology, and how things have changed. So definitely looking at what was done in 1916, walking the elephant through the streets, and what you would be doing now. Geography is also a fantastic learning area that can be looked at with this book. So I suggest using Google Earth, or even getting a good old physical map out and actually mapping that journey that Jessie went on from Moore Park, and how she crossed the harbour to get to Taronga Zoo. Science is also a seamless link, looking at living things, how we take care of living things, and in particular that connection that Jessie had with the keeper, and how animals in captivity are kept versus those in the wild, looking at the similarities and the differences.